My voice cracked as I left another voicemail, the cold glass of the phone pressed against my cheek in a mansion that felt more like a tomb. It was Christmas Eve, and outside, faint carols drifted through the frosted windows, mocking the silence that swallowed me whole. I was a millionaire, my name etched in headlines, my success a beacon for others. But that night I was begging my own daughter to come home, just for an hour, just to see her face. My heart thudded with a fear I hadn't known since I was a boy, abandoned on a street corner, waiting for a father who never came. How did I become this man? How does someone who clawed his way from nothing to everything end up pleading for a single moment with the people he loves? The truth is a wound I've tried to ignore. I can still see my daughter's toothy grin as she rode her bike, my wife's soft hum as she cooked Sunday dinners, moments I traded for boardrooms and bank accounts. Somewhere along the way, my empire became my exile. But could I rebuild what I'd lost? That question gnaws at me, and it's why I'm telling you this story. This isn't just about wealth or regret. It's about the gut punch of realizing your family has moved on without you. It's about the quiet rage that festers when you're left with nothing but echoes of your own mistakes. But that Christmas Eve, something happened, something I didn't expect when I hung up the phone. A single word whispered through the line changed everything. What was it? I'll get there, but not yet. Join me as I unravel this story of loss, redemption, and the fight to reclaim what matters most. It's for anyone who's ever felt the sting of a door closed by someone they love. If this resonates, hit that like button, share a moment when you felt left behind in the comments, and subscribe to follow this journey. I'm laying my heart bare. Will you share yours? My voice broke as I left another voicemail, the cold glass of the phone pressed against my cheek in a mansion that felt more like a graveyard than a home. It was Christmas Eve, and the faint scent of rabanada drifted through the frosted windows from a neighbor's kitchen, a cruel taunt of the warmth I'd lost. I was Michael Reed, a millionaire whose name glittered in headlines, a man who'd built an empire from nothing. But that night, I was just a father, begging my daughter, Lily, to come home. Just for an hour, I whispered into the void of her voicemail. Just to see your face. The silence that followed was louder than any rejection. I paced the marble foyer, my footsteps echoing like a drumbeat of failure. Each step a reminder of how far I'd fallen, not in wealth, but in love. The chandelier above glinted coldly, its light catching the edges of a life I'd polished to perfection, but left hollow. I replayed the voicemail in my head. Lily, it's Dad. Tô tentando de verdade. I miss you. The words felt like pebbles dropped into a well, sinking without a ripple. She hadn't answered in months. Maybe she never would. In the living room, the Christmas tree stood bare, its lights flickering like a dying heartbeat. I hadn't touched it since Lily was 10, when we'd laughed together, untangling tinsel, her small hands tugging at the strands while I pretended to be annoyed. That memory was a shard of glass in my chest, sharp and unyielding. I could still hear her giggle, see her gap-toothed smile, but it was fading, like a photograph left too long in the sun. I sank onto the leather couch, scrolling through old photos on my phone. There was Lily, 6 years old, wobbling on her bike, her grin brighter than the summer sky. There was Sarah, my wife, ex-wife, humming softly over Sunday Facuada, her eyes warm with a love I hadn't noticed slipping away. Each image cut deeper, a reminder of the life I'd traded for boardrooms and bank accounts. How had I let it come to this? My phone buzzed and my heart leapt. Maybe Lily. But it was Sarah, her text clinical and cold. We're busy, Michael, maybe after the holidays. My chest tightened, a vise of grief and guilt. The holidays weren't just another day. They were everything, a beacon of family, of togetherness, of the things I'd taken for granted. Christmas was supposed to mean hot chocolate, Lily's laughter, Sarah's teasing about my terrible gift wrapping. Now it was just me, alone in this mausoleum of my own making. I poured a whiskey, the amber liquid glinting in the dim light. The burn in my throat was sharp but fleeting, no match for the ache that had settled in my bones. How had I become this man? A millionaire, yes, but a stranger to the people I loved most. The silence pressed against me, heavy as grief, wrapping me in its cold embrace. That night I didn't know it, but I was standing on the edge of a truth I wasn't ready to face. About my family, about the lies I'd told myself to keep going. Something was about to unravel, and it would change everything. I built my empire from a crumbling row house in a neighborhood where dreams were as scarce as hope. As a kid, I swore I'd never go hungry again, never feel the sting of my father's absence. But every deal I signed, every dollar I stacked, pushed Lily and Sarah further away. That Christmas Eve wasn't the first time I'd begged. It was just the loudest, the one that cracked me open. I sat in my study, the weight of my choices pressing down, and wondered how I'd let it all slip through my fingers. I remembered the first time I missed Lily's school play. She was 7, dressed as a sunflower, her face painted with hope. I'd promised to be there, but a board meeting ran late, and I chose the deal over her smile. When I got home, her tiny face was crumpled with disappointment, her eyes searching mine for an explanation I didn't have. That image haunted me more than any failed contract, a ghost that followed me through every corner of this too big house. Sarah's voice echoed in my mind, sharp and tired. "You're never here, Michael. Nunca tarde verdade." I'd brushed it off, thinking money would fix everything. Private schools for Lily, vacations for Sarah, a life where they'd want for nothing. But money couldn't buy back the moments I'd missed. I found a letter from Lily, tucked in a drawer, written in her careful 12-year-old scrawl. "Dad, I wish you'd stay home more." My hands shook as I read it, each word a fresh cut, bleeding out the truth I'd ignored. Another memory surfaced, sharper, more brutal. Sarah packing a suitcase after I missed our anniversary for a merger. "I'll make it up," I'd said, my voice hollow even then. She'd looked at me, her eyes dull with resignation, and left without a word. I'd promised myself I'd fix it, buy her something shiny, take her somewhere warm. But I never did. The suitcase stayed packed, and Sarah stayed gone, taking Lily with her. I called Lily again that night, my voice steadier but no less desperate. "Lily, it's me. I just want to talk." No answer. The silence screamed louder than any rejection, a void that swallowed my hope. I stared at the phone, willing it to ring, but it stayed mute, a cold slab of glass that mocked my loneliness. My wealth was a cage, one I'd built with every late night, every missed dinner, every promise I'd broken. I'd locked my family out, and now I was the one trapped inside. What had I done to make them stop caring? The question clawed at me, relentless. I thought of my own father, his empty promises, the way he'd left me waiting on a street corner, my small hands clutching a toy he'd never see. Was that what I'd become to Lily? A shadow, a voice on a phone she didn't want to answer. The realization hit like a wave, cold and suffocating. My empire was nothing without them. But as I sat there, the whiskey glass empty, I felt something shift. A spark of resolve, fragile but real. I wasn't done fighting. Not yet. Sleep was a stranger that night. The mansion's walls seemed to whisper, pulling me back to memories I'd buried deep. I wandered to Lily's old room, the door creaking like a confession. Her absence was a weight I couldn't shake, a hollow ache that filled the space where her laughter used to live. The room was frozen in time, a shrine to a girl I'd lost, not to distance, but to my own failures. I stood there, my breath shallow, feeling like an intruder in my own daughter's world. On her bed lay Mr. Whiskers, her stuffed bear, its fur worn thin from years of love. I picked it up, the faint scent of her childhood shampoo, lavender, and innocence, hitting me like a punch. My throat closed, tears burning behind my eyes. I could see her at 5, clutching that bear, her small voice begging me to read one more story. I'd always said later, but later never came. Now, holding Mr. Whiskers, I felt the full weight of all those lost moments. A photo on her dresser caught my eye. Us at the beach, Lily's laughter frozen in a moment of pure joy. She was 8, her hair tangled with salt, her smile brighter than the sun. I'd been on my phone, closing a deal, barely looking up as she called, "Dad, watch me!" That memory was a blade, slicing through the lies I'd told myself, that I was building a future for her, for us. I'd been building walls instead. My phone lit up, a notification jarring in the quiet, an old email from Sarah, sent a year ago. "Michael, we can't keep waiting for you." I hadn't replied, hadn't even read it until now. The words stung, each one a mirror reflecting my absence. I'd been so busy chasing success that I hadn't noticed my family slipping away. I sat on Lily's bed, clutching the bear, and let the tears come. I hadn't cried since I was a boy, left on a street corner, waiting for a father who never showed. "Sorry, Lily," I whispered to the empty room, my voice breaking. But apologies to shadows don't heal wounds. They don't bring back the years I'd traded for power, the nights I'd chosen work over tucking her in. I thought of my own father, his promises as empty as this house. Was I any different? The question burned, a fire I couldn't extinguish. I wanted to call her again, to beg, but what could I say that I hadn't already? That moment, sitting in her room, was a reckoning. I'd built a life most men would kill for, but it was a lie, a glittering, empty shell. Lily's absence, Sarah's silence, they were my doing. Yet, in the quiet, a small spark flickered. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe I could still reach her. What's the moment you realized you'd hurt someone you love, and it was too late to undo it? Share it below. I need to know I'm not alone in this, that there's a way back from this kind of failure. Christmas morning broke grey and cold, the weight of Lily's unanswered voicemail heavy in my chest. I'd replayed it 100 times in my head, her silence louder than any words. Then, at 8:03 a.m., my phone rang, her name flashing on the screen. My heart surged, a desperate hope clawing its way up. I answered, my voice shaky. "Lily?" Her reply was soft, trembling, like she was holding something back. "Dad, I got your message." But there was an edge in her tone, anger maybe, or pain. I couldn't tell. Then she said it, one word before the line went dead. "Enough." It hit like a slap, sharp and final, echoing in the hollow of my skull. Enough? Enough of what? Me? My apologies? The years of absence I couldn't undo? I stared at the phone, my hands trembling, and redialed, once, twice, a dozen times, like a man possessed. Voicemail. Always voicemail. Each unanswered call was a fresh wound, a reminder that I'd pushed her too far, maybe beyond repair. I couldn't stay still. I grabbed my keys and drove to Sarah's new apartment, a modest building in a neighborhood that smelled of churrasco and real life, a world I'd left behind. The contrast to my sterile mansion was stark. Kids played in the street, laughter spilling from open windows. I knocked on Sarah's door, my heart pounding, but no one answered. A neighbor, an older woman with kind eyes, watched me from her porch. "They're not home," she said, her voice gentle but firm. I scrawled a note on a scrap of paper. "To tentando, Sarah. Please let me in." I slipped it under the door, my hands shaking, feeling like a beggar at a gate I'd once called home. Driving back, enough looped in my mind, a riddle I couldn't crack. Was it a rejection? A wall she'd built to keep me out? Or was it something else, a crack in her armor, a sign she was still listening? I didn't know, but the uncertainty was a cliff I wasn't ready to jump off. Back in my mansion, I sat in the dark, the silence heavier than ever. That word, enough, was a blade cutting through the lies I'd told myself. I thought I could buy back their love with time, with effort, but maybe I'd misread everything. Maybe Lily wasn't just angry, she was done. The thought was a cold fist around my heart. I saw her face in my mind, not the girl on the bike, but the woman she'd become, someone I barely knew. Had I lost her for good? I poured another whiskey, but it sat untouched. I didn't want to numb this pain. I needed to feel it, to let it burn. Something was shifting, a truth I couldn't yet name. That word, that call, it wasn't just a door slamming shut. It was a challenge, a chance to prove I could be more than the man who'd let them down. I wasn't ready to give up, not yet. But as I sat there, the question gnawed at me. What did enough really mean? Sarah agreed to meet me, but not at home. A coffee shop, neutral ground, as if I were a stranger knocking on her life. I arrived early, my hands sweaty, unsure whether to hope or brace myself. The place smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon, a faint hum of holiday music in the background. Sarah walked in, her face older, etched with a weariness I'd caused. She sat across from me, her posture rigid, her eyes cold. "You can't just show up, Michael," she said, her voice steady but sharp, cutting through the chatter around us. I asked about Lily, about that word. Enough. What did it mean? Sarah's jaw tightened, her gaze flickering with something like pity or maybe disgust. She's protecting herself. From you. The words landed like a punch, stealing my breath. Protecting herself? From me? I was her father, the man who'd built a life for her, but all I could see was the truth. I'd built a life without her. My voice cracked as I begged for a chance to see them, to make it right. Sarah didn't flinch. "You don't get to decide when you're family again." A memory flashed, vivid and cruel. Lily's high school graduation, her cap tassels swinging as she smiled for photos. I'd been stuck in a meeting, promising to watch the video later. I never did. That moment was one of many I'd let slip, each one a brick in the wall between us. I looked at Sarah, her face a map of the years I'd missed, and felt the weight of my failures settle deeper. "I'm trying," I said, my voice barely a whisper. She shook her head, unimpressed. Sarah leaned forward, her voice low, deliberate. "Figure out who you are without your millions, Michael, or you'll lose us for good." She stood, leaving her coffee untouched, and walked out, the bell above the door jingling like a final note. I sat there, the world blurring, her words echoing in my skull. Who was I without my money? I'd never asked myself that, never had to, but now it was all that mattered. I'd built an empire, but I'd lost my home. Driving back, the city lights smeared through my tears. I saw Lily's face, her graduation smile, and felt the ache of all I'd ignored. Sarah's warning wasn't just a challenge, it was a mirror, forcing me to see the man I'd become, a father who'd failed, a husband who'd walked away. I wanted to call Lily, to beg again, but Sarah's words stopped me. Begging wasn't enough. I had to change, to strip away the layers of pride and wealth that had buried me. That coffee shop meeting was a door slamming shut, but also a crack of light. I could still fight for them, but it meant facing myself first. Have you ever had to confront the ugliest parts of yourself to save someone you love? What did you do to make it right? Share it in the comments. I need to know how you found your way back, because I'm still searching for mine. Sarah's words burned like a brand, searing through the fog of my denial. I drove home, the city lights blurring into streaks of gold and red, my tears carving paths down my cheeks. I was still reeling when my phone rang, the screen flashing Anna's name, my sister, who I hadn't spoken to in years. Her voice was soft but urgent, like she was breaking a vow of silence. "Michael, Lily's been struggling. She didn't want you to know." My heart sank, a cold weight settling in my gut. Struggling? My Lily? What had I missed? Anna told me Lily had dropped out of college last year, overwhelmed, drowning in the pressure to be perfect. "She thinks it's because of you," Anna said, her words gentle but brutal. "Your expectations, your absence." I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. I'd thought my money was a gift, a way to give her everything, but it had been a chain, weighing her down. I pulled into my driveway, the mansion looming like a monument to my failures, and felt the truth sink in. I'd broken her. Inside, I went to Lily's room, desperate for something to hold on to. I found her journal, tucked under a pile of old sketchbooks. A new entry, one I hadn't seen, stopped me cold. Dad's money made me feel invisible. Each word was a dagger, twisting in my chest. She'd written about feeling lost, about trying to be the daughter I wanted, not the one she was. I sank to the floor, the journal trembling in my hands, her pain a mirror to my own. I called my therapist, someone I hadn't spoken to since I thought I'd fixed myself with success. "Eu falei com ela," I said, my voice raw, the Portuguese slipping out like a confession. He didn't sugarcoat it. "You can't change the past, Michael, but you can act now." His words were a lifeline, pulling me from the edge. I needed to do more than apologize. I needed to show up, to be the father I'd never been. I returned to my office, the walls lined with awards that mocked me. Each plaque, each framed article, was a reminder of the time I'd stolen from Lily, from Sarah. They were worthless now, just shiny lies I'd told myself to justify my absence. I sat at my desk, staring at the phone, wanting to call Lily, but knowing she wasn't ready. Anna's call had cracked something open, a truth I couldn't ignore. I hadn't just lost my family, I'd pushed them away with every choice I'd made. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, Lily's journal beside me, her words echoing, invisible. I'd made her feel like nothing when she was everything, but Anna's voice lingered too, a faint spark of hope. Lily was struggling, but she was still out there, still fighting. Maybe I could fight too. Maybe I could reach her before it was too late. The truth was brutal, but it was also a map, pointing me toward a path I hadn't dared to take. I just had to find the courage to start walking. I couldn't wait another day, another hour to start fixing what I'd broken. Lily's journal, her words about feeling invisible had gutted me, but they also lit a fire. I sat at my desk, the mansion silent around me, and wrote her a letter. Not an email, not a text, but a real letter, the kind you hold, the kind that carries weight. I poured out my heart. No excuses, just truth. "Eu errei, Lily," I wrote. "I was wrong to choose work over you. I want to be better." I sealed it, I said, my hands shaking, knowing it might not be enough. I stopped checking work emails that weekend, the first time in decades. The silence was terrifying, like stepping off a cliff, but it felt right, like shedding a skin that didn't fit anymore. My phone, usually buzzing with notifications, stayed quiet, and for once I let it. I needed to make space for Lily, for Sarah, for the man I wanted to be. That choice, small as it was, felt like a rebellion against the life I'd built, a life that had cost me everything that mattered. Sarah texted me later that day. "Lily read your letter. She's not ready, but she's thinking about it." My heart leapt, a fragile hope blooming in the wreckage, not ready, but thinking. It was something, a crack in the wall between us. I clung to it, turning her words over in my mind like a precious stone. Maybe she'd heard me. Maybe she'd felt my regret. Maybe there was still a chance to reach her. I drove to my old neighborhood, The row house where I'd grown up, its cracked walls a reminder of the boy who'd sworn to escape poverty. That boy had dreamed of love, not just money, but somewhere along the way I'd forgotten. Standing there, the air thick with the scent of grilled meat and laughter from nearby houses, I felt him again. That boy, still hungry for connection. I wasn't just fighting for Lily, I was fighting for him too. I left Lily another voicemail that night. "To Ophelia, when you're ready." My voice shook, but every word was true. I didn't expect an answer, didn't dare hope for one, but saying it out loud felt like planting a seed. I pictured her listening, her face softening, even just a little. Doubt gnawed at me. What if she never called back? What if I'd lost her for good? But I pushed it down, refusing to let fear win this time. The letter, the voicemail, the quiet weekend, they were small steps, but they were mine. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing deals or dollars. I was chasing my daughter, my family. The mansion felt less like a tomb now, more like a place where I could start again. Hope was fragile, a flicker in the dark, but it was there. I held on to it, knowing the road ahead would be long, maybe impossible, but I was moving forward, one trembling step at a time, toward a future where Lily might one day look at me and see her father, not a stranger. A week after the letter, my phone rang and Jake's name flashed on the screen. Lily's high school friend, now a social worker, had heard my voicemails through the grapevine. "We need to talk," he said, his voice calm but firm, like he was holding a door open but wouldn't let me through easily. We met at a diner, the kind with sticky tables and the smell of burnt coffee, a world away from my polished life. Jake's eyes were kind but guarded, sizing me up as I sat across from him. "Lily's hurt," he said, cutting straight to it. "But she misses you. She just doesn't trust you yet." His words were a lifeline and a blade, offering hope while slicing through my defenses. He told me about Lily volunteering at a shelter, pouring her heart into strangers because I hadn't been there to receive it. Pride swelled in my chest, but shame followed, sharp and heavy. My daughter was giving the world the love I'd failed to give her. Jake leaned forward, his voice low. "Show up, Michael. No so con palabras. Actions." His bluntness hit like a wake-up call, echoing Sarah's warning, but with a warmth that made me believe I could do this. He wasn't just Lily's friend. He was a bridge, someone who saw the good in her and maybe the potential for good in me. I nodded, my throat tight, knowing this was my chance to prove I wasn't the man who'd let her down. I signed up to volunteer at the shelter that afternoon, my hands trembling as I filled out the form. The idea of being near Lily, even without speaking, made my heart race. I wasn't ready to face her, not yet, but I needed to be in her world, to feel the ground she walked on. The shelter was a low brick building, buzzing with life, laughter, clinking dishes, the hum of people who cared. It was humbling, a stark contrast to the sterile silence of my mansion. That night I dreamed of Lily as a child, her small hand in mine as we walked through a park, her laughter bright and unburdened. I woke up gasping, the dream so vivid I could still feel her warmth. Tears stung my eyes, but they weren't just grief, they were resolve. Jake's words had given me purpose, a map to follow. I wasn't just fighting for Lily's forgiveness. I was fighting for her trust, for a chance to be her father again. The road was steep, and I was terrified of falling. Sitting in my car outside the diner, I replayed Jake's challenge. Show up. It was simple, but it felt like everything. I'd spent years building walls with my absence, my ambition. Now I had to tear them down, brick by brick. The shelter was my first step, a place where I could be near Lily, even if she wasn't ready to see me. Jake had opened a door, and I was determined to walk through it, no matter how long it took. I wasn't just chasing a dream, I was chasing my daughter, and this time I wouldn't let her go. I saw Lily at the shelter, serving meals to a line of weary faces, her smile a faint echo of the one I'd loved since she was a child. I stayed in the back, washing dishes, my hands raw from soap and hot water. The work was grueling, humbling, a world away from the boardrooms where I'd spent my life. I didn't approach her, not yet. I wasn't ready, and neither was she. But just seeing her, moving with quiet purpose, was enough to keep me there, scrubbing plates in the shadows. Her eyes met mine for a fleeting moment, a flicker of recognition crossing her face before she turned away. That look was everything, a spark in the dark, a sign she knew I was there. My heart thudded, caught between hope and fear. Did she hate me? Or was that glance, brief as it was, a crack in the wall between us? I kept washing, the clatter of dishes drowning out the questions, but her face stayed with me, sharp and vivid. I overheard her later, talking to a coworker about college, her dream to become a therapist. "I want to help people heal," she said, her voice steady, full of fire. My chest ached. I'd missed so much of her life, her passions, her growth. She wasn't just my little girl anymore. She was a woman with dreams I hadn't been there to nurture. The realization was a quiet wound, but it also filled me with pride. She was stronger than I'd ever been. After the shift, I left a note on her locker. "Feel her? I'm so proud of you. I'll be here, always." I didn't expect a reply, didn't dare hope for one. Writing it felt like a prayer, a promise I was making to myself as much as to her. I slipped it into the slot and walked away, my hands still damp, my heart lighter, but trembling. I was trying, really trying, and maybe she'd see that one day. Driving home, the city lights felt softer, like they were guiding me instead of mocking me. I replayed that glance, that tiny moment of connection, and felt something shift. I was shedding the man I'd been, the one who'd chosen deals over dinners, ambition over love. The shelter had changed me, even if just a little. It was honest work, raw and real, and it made me feel closer to Lily, even if she wasn't ready to talk. The gap between us was still wide, a chasm built by years of my absence, but that glance, that note, they were steps across it. I wasn't naive enough to think one day at the shelter would fix everything, but it was a start. For the first time, I felt like I was moving toward her, not just chasing a memory. I held on to that hope, fragile as it was, and let it carry me forward. Maybe, just maybe, I was finally getting closer to the daughter I'd lost, to the father I could still become. Months passed, and Lily began to let me in, one tentative step at a time. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it was real, raw, and more precious than anything I'd ever owned. We met for coffee, just the two of us, in a small cafe that smelled of vanilla and fresh bread. Her smile was guarded, but it was there, a spark of the girl I remembered, the one who'd once looked at me like I was her hero. I held my breath, afraid to break the moment. We talked about her childhood, the memories I'd let fade. "I needed you, Dad," she said, her voice quiet but steady, cutting through the hum of the cafe. I didn't defend myself, didn't make excuses. I listened, letting her words sink in like stones, heavy but necessary. "I know," I said, my throat tight. "I'm here now." Her eyes searched mine, looking for the truth, and I prayed she saw it. I wasn't the man who'd failed her anymore. I was trying to be someone new. Sarah joined us one day, her presence a quiet bridge between us. She sat across from me, her face softer than it had been in that coffee shop months ago. "Você tá tentando," she said, her voice low, almost kind. "That's something." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start, a crack in the wall we'd all built. We talked about small things, Lily's classes, Sarah's new job, normal things, family things. For the first time, I felt like I belonged. I sold part of my company, a decision that felt like cutting away a piece of myself. But it wasn't loss, it was freedom. Money had been my chain, tying me to a life that cost me my family. Now, time was my currency, and I spent it on them. Coffee dates, quiet moments, the chance to listen. I wasn't rich in the way I'd been, but I was richer in ways that mattered. Lily's laughter, Sarah's cautious smile, they were worth more than any deal I'd ever closed. Lily hugged me before leaving one day, her arms soft but real, wrapping around me like a lifeline. I held her, my tears falling silently, the warmth of her embrace the first I'd felt in years. It wasn't perfect, wasn't the end of our story, but it was a beginning. I was learning to be the father she deserved, the man I'd forgotten how to be. The road was still long, but I was walking it one step at a time. This isn't the end, it's a new chapter, one I'm writing with every moment I show up. I'm still fighting, still learning, still chasing the family I almost lost. If this story touched you, hit that like button and share a time you fought to reconnect with someone you love. Your stories keep me going. Remind me we're all searching for our way back home. Subscribe to follow this journey. I'm bearing my soul here, and I'd love to hear yours. What's the moment you found your way back to someone you thought you'd lost forever?